basically self-taught. And I just started making little movies about my family and my friends and goofy little things just to kind of learn how to shoot and cut. That's just basic good filmmaking, I think. In terms of winning festivals, it's like, seems like just luck. My name is Frank Popper. I'm an independent filmmaker. I've been in the business probably for about almost 30 years. I have done 3 documentary feature films, a lot of short ones. All 3 of them have been broadcast on national television. One of them appeared on Netflix. I've been pretty successful with those. I wish I could do more. So of the 3 documentary films that I've done, my second one has been the most recognized and won the most awards. It's called Can Mr. Smith Get to Washington Anymore?
So this woman who was a friend of my grandma's, she got the first solicitation letter we sent during the campaign, and she calls my grandma and says, "Ida, this is wonderful. Your grandson, he's running for Congress." And my grandma, who's 96, said, "No, I don't think he's running for Congress. He's running for the..."
And it's a political documentary, and it won all kinds of awards. It was shortlisted for an Academy Award under the Best Feature category the year that it came out. In other words, it was being considered for an Academy Award nomination. And it was the best 15 films that were submitted to the Academy that year from all over the country and around the world, and we were the top 15. Basically self-taught. And I just started making little movies. I started making little movies about my family and my friends and goofy little things just to kind of learn how to shoot and cut and all of that. That's just basic good filmmaking, I think. In terms of winning festivals, I could say that seems like just luck because there are so many people who are trying to get into festivals these days. When I first started out, it was sort of pre-digital. But once the digital world came into being, George Lucas said, one day anybody who wants to make a movie can. And we're living in that day right now. So really, young people, old people, people who know nothing about storytelling, filmmaking, I mean, you can use your iPhone, an iMovie, cheap technology to make movies. And so there's so many more that are being made these days that I feel like, and the quality of them is so good that it's increasingly difficult to get into festivals. I mean, how I managed to get in my first festival, I couldn't get into my first festival. I submitted to festivals all over the country and got nothing. And it wasn't until a friend of mine who lived in Los Angeles said, "Let me take a copy of your film back to LA. Maybe I'll see somebody there who can help." And she was at a cocktail party, and she met somebody who knew somebody who was running a film festival, one of the premier film festivals, doc festivals in the country. At the time it was called Silverdocs. The festival director saw it, and she called me like 3 days later, and she says, "You're in." I told her, I said, I submitted this film to your festival 2 months ago and never heard anything from anybody. So that taught me that it's very difficult to break through unless you have a reputation already. What you need is luck, and I think if there's some way you can figure out how to get your film to the right person, it can be so helpful. How to find a good story. To me, that's the biggest challenge for me personally as a filmmaker, because I don't tell issue-driven stories, I tell character-driven stories. I'm always looking for a compelling person with a fascinating story that might hold potential for a good film, and then I'll start filming them. But I don't come across them that often. It seems like it takes years. And when it happens, when I come across somebody, it's like lightning struck. I've got to tell their story. So it's not an exaggeration to say that one of the reasons I haven't made that many films is that there seems to be these gaps, like of years before I come across something that grabs me so much that I'm willing to say, I'm willing to sacrifice all my time right now, and we're talking about at least a year and a half or more on this story, because I believe that this person will hold the key to a compelling story. But I can't speak for everyone, not everybody works that way. I feel like in a way it's sort of cheating though, because if I can find somebody that the camera loves, as they say, you know, then and they're doing fascinating things, then I cross fingers that there's going to be a good story. So my 3 docs are all about fascinating, compelling people who are doing really interesting things. So what I did was I studied movies. I had my favorite film directors, Stanley Kubrick, Martin Scorsese, and others, and I watched their movies over and over again to see how they told stories. And I said to myself, I want to make documentaries that look like movies. I will say this, that film I was talking about before, Can Mr. Smith Get to Washington Anymore, is one of my favorites, because one of the best compliments I ever got. That film, as I mentioned, was being shown at festivals around the world, and it was showing at a festival in Paris at the time. And a young woman came up to me after the screening. She said, you know, I came in a few minutes late and I missed your introduction. And 15 minutes into the film, I said to my friend, I said, is this a movie or a documentary? And I said, that's the best compliment I ever got. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to tell a story in a way that feels like motion picture. So what do filmmakers need to know before they start production? I think most films are made with a crew. I've only recently started working with crews. I'm working at a PBS station in St. Louis, and to me it's been this huge luxury. It's amazing. I guess I should have been doing this the whole time. But I've discovered that when I'm working with another cameraman, we're getting each other's ways, because I don't know how that is supposed to work. I didn't go to film school to learn how that works. That's how it works in my world. I have everything that I need. I can carry myself. I have a tripod. I have batteries. I mean, all the things that everybody needs, but it's on a much reduced scale. I don't have any secret advice in this department, obviously. So what are the key factors for a smooth production? So I don't work with scripts. I have an idea, I think, of where the story's going, because I know this person I'm filming has a life that I'm going to be following. I wouldn't describe them as going smoothly. They're going smoothly if I can get up the next morning and keep filming. So the rules are different. The rules of the road are different when you're working on a film and you got a crew of like 2, 3, 5. I mean, I'll say this, I did make a feature film many years ago before I started making documentaries. It was a $1.5 million feature film, because I thought I wanted to make narrative films, fiction films. And we had a crew of 50. We filmed it in Hollywood. It took almost a year to develop the script, and then to another 6 months or longer to find the right people, and then find the locations. I mean, when you get into that world, that's serious filmmaking, because there's so many parts that have to come together. But that whole process almost killed me as a human being. I wasn't having fun. I was supposed to be the director, and we were casting in New York, because the script was getting attention. And we got a woman who wasn't famous, Deborah Aquila, at the time, but as we were developing our film, she had just received acclaim for casting Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Steven Soderbergh's film. And so she said, well, now I'm kind of like moving to the big time. I can get you some really big people. Not stars, but people that audiences will recognize. Well, who would say no to that? We did that. And what happened was, we got some really good people who had done many, many films before, and all of us who were developing this picture were all novices. We'd never done it before. And it turns out, I didn't know this, they had all the power. We were going to go with no names, but because we were seduced by the opportunity of getting bigger names, we went with it. And we realized, well, they started saying to us, well, you can't just use this guy who never shot a film before. I mean, we've done this before. how are we gonna know? We don't trust this guy, you know? Get rid of him, get a real person. So that worked for everybody. And it came down to me, our cinematographer, our production designer, our sound people, I mean, everybody, the whole crew. And finally, I was like the last man standing. I had to fire myself because, you know, the whole level of the film had risen to a scale of demand on all of us that none of us had expected. So I decided I wanted to make movies, but I didn't know, I knew then I didn't want to do that. And so from that point on, I decided I'm just going to make my own movies, small documentaries that I can make myself, and I have to worry about all that stuff. Post-production tips. Here's a tip. I don't know whether, you know, I don't know whether this is something that you learn in school or not, but I've learned it over time. I'd say this, you know, when you've followed somebody for 6 months or a year and you've got all this footage, I've learned that it's really critical that every day, you don't go too long, but when you're done shooting, you need to look at your footage to make sure you're getting what you need. In one of my earlier productions, I wasn't doing that. I was trusting it was looking okay, and it didn't turn out so well. So I try to stay, you know, when I'm in production, I like to be anticipating post-production and looking at my footage every day, keeping it organized, you know, keeping, you know, the dates and a description of what's in each shot and putting them in the proper bins. But the one thing that I've done, maybe everybody does this, I don't know, but what I do is like when you've got 100, 200 hours of footage, like what do you do with it? How do you find the story, you know, in there? And you could shoot for a whole day and say, nothing happened, but you go through it, you go through the footage, you say, oh, look, there's something good there. And so you, as you're going through it, you make a timeline, you put all the footage down on your timeline, and then you pick only the stuff that you really like, the stuff that you don't like, you get rid of it. And let's say you've got like a full day, you say you've got an hour of footage, and you cut it down to 30 minutes. And then what I'll do is, I'll either right then and there or the next day, I'll save that timeline, the original one, plus then I'll start working with the shorter one, the 30-minute one, and I'll do the whole process over again. I'll say, you know what, this doesn't look like, I thought it was important the first time I looked at it, but it's not so important now. Next thing you know, it's down to like 10 minutes. And I keep doing that until it gets down to 3 minutes, and then I discovered, oh my God, there is like a little tiny story in there, which may be useful at some point. So, I mean, that's the most important tip that I think I can offer. I don't know whether it's standard in the industry to do it or not, but I found that that's really the best way to sort of wrangle all of that footage that you've got into something meaningful. Look at all your stuff again, and you will find things that meant nothing at the time that become really important in telling your story. I think that's probably the best post-production tip I can give. I think with regard to distribution, with regard to festivals, with regard to funding, for me, you know, the answer to all these issues is making something that's so powerful people can't say no. I'm very interested in emotion, so I try to not explain anything in a grant proposal. This is what it's going to look like, or tell somebody, potential funder, this is my idea. Unless I have a pilot. If I can say, look, let me show you what I want to do here. That I've had so much success doing that. It's the only way that I ever do it. I highly recommend it. And I would never want to like try to talk anybody out of money based on just my words alone. I think it's helpful if you've gone through the trouble to actually make a little movie, a little teaser of what it could look like. That makes it more real for everybody. And I believe it really helps with regard to funding. And also when you've got a good product, you know, with regard to distribution. By the way, I am probably the worst person to talk to about distribution. I've had luck in distribution because I've gotten into some festivals that attracted distributors, but I didn't go into the whole process saying, you know, if I don't get distribution, if I don't get into festivals, it's a failure. No, it's a success because I've made a movie that I had fun making, I entertained myself, and I feel like if I'm entertaining myself, you know, others will be entertained as well. That's been my philosophy, and it's worked out pretty well for me.